Hi, Jason here from Bling Lights, and today we're going to go over a quick comparison between the three major lighting technologies for headlights, both factory and aftermarket: halogen, HID, and LED. We've been selling lighting since 2001, and I personally hold the patent for crystal LED driving lights, and that was patented back in 2008. Mercedes-AMG started incorporating crystals into their driving lights this year on the AMG series. Now, of the three technologies, halogen is by far the oldest. It started being incorporated in automotive use back in 1939 and then became mandatory the following year as a sealed beam. That followed through in the United States all the way through 1984. That's when replacement bulbs became available and weren't invented, just became available for use in the United States, and that allowed for a lot more freedom in design as well as increased visibility. Now, like many other innovations, the United States, even though we invented it, we're the last to incorporate it because we're weighed down in a lot of BS regulation. Whereas countries overseas were incorporating those replacement halogen bulbs decades before the United States. Now, even though halogen is the oldest of the three technologies, innovations are still being made. Not until recently, GE came out with HIR halogen bulb for automotive use, not available in all sizes. What HIR does is it takes a thin metal envelope and closes the filament, and this causes the filament to get twice as hot and twice as bright as a standard halogen bulb. And amazingly, it does not produce any additional heat externally, nor require any extra power. So a lot of benefits without much drawback, or any drawback. Even though the HIR bulbs are twice as bright, they still aren't on par with HID, not nearly on par with HID or LED. Halogen bulbs are the least expensive of the three, and the easiest to maintain of the three. When a light goes out with a halogen, you just take the bulb out, you hold it up, you can see if the filament is burnt or there's a residue on the outside of the bulb, and you just pop in a replacement and you're good to go. With HID or LED, there's secondary components. So when a light goes out, it's not clear exactly what caused the light to go out. An easy trick would be to take out, for the HID, take out the bulb and test it on the other side. If it works on the other side, it's most likely the ballast on the other side. If it doesn't work on the other side, it's probably the bulb. With LEDs, the lighting element is an actual chip, and for factory LED headlights, it's soldered to a board. So if it can even be replaced, it requires the entire headlamp to be disassembled. That brings me back to HID. If the HID, if the ballast is a problem for a factory HID setup, then you might have to remove the entire headlamp, because often the factory HID ballast are on the bottom of the headlamp itself. Another downside to halogen is that the color isn't all that pleasing. The color doesn't do a good job of matching natural sunlight, and natural sunlight is the best for nighttime visibility. And HID and LED do a really good job of matching that white, blue, exotic output that you see often on luxury cars, and it's most pleasing to see and to use. Another drawback is halogen uses the most power of the three too. On average, halogen bulbs use about 55 watts. On average, HIDs use about 35 watts. and LEDs use even less power than the HIDs. I wouldn't recommend replacing the lights just to get the lower power consumption. Even though the lower power draw does equate to better fuel efficiency, it's so insignificant you will never see the improved gas mileage. It'll never pay for itself in the life of the vehicle. It's really only something to consider if you have a small displacement motorcycle where you have very limited power to begin with, and then it would be a good idea, because you can take some of the strain off the factory electrical system of a small displacement motorcycle. HIDs, which is the second technology we're going to go over, that started to be incorporated on a handful of luxury vehicles back in the early 90s. I recall Lincoln was among the first, and the very first HID setups had ballast the size of bricks, and today you can see these ballasts have become relatively small, and this plugs into the HID bulb. And unlike halogen, HID bulbs don't have any filament. This little bubble right there is the lighting element. It's just filled with xenon gas, and this ballast does two main functions. It converts the DC to the AC, and there's an igniter in here which gives an initial surge of power, which gets the xenon gas to ignite and to glow that intense, super intense white and blue, beautiful light. This little metal tube running along it is not a filament, by the way. Now, for HIDs, very common aftermarket accessory. The sizes are standardized, so replacement parts are easily attainable and become increasingly affordable. They are available in all sizes, so you can upgrade pretty much any halogen headlight to HID. This is a dual beam HID bulb. So for the few sizes that do both high and low, such as H4, for a halogen bulb it would have two filaments. HIDs, as I mentioned, don't have filaments, so HIDs got around this problem with either one or two tricks. There's this bi-xenon bulb, which see how the base is a little bigger, has a little motor or a magnet in there, and it moves the bulb up and down to do both the low and the high beam function. And then there are other HID bulbs which just simply have two bulbs on one base. I recommend this type of bulb with no moving parts. No moving parts, less things to break. And also HIDs, they take several seconds to warm up to reach maximum light output intensity. So when you turn them on, it's just like it's very dim at first and quickly becomes maximum output. So they aren't good for flashing. And if you go to switch on your high beams late at night, you could be blind for a couple seconds. So I like this setup where there's a high beam which sustains halogen, and the HID is the low beam. HIDs are so bright that you won't need your high beams for anything other than flashing. So what's the point of upgrading your HIDs and your high beams to HID? And the HIDs do a really good job of matching natural sunlight, best for nighttime visibility, and they are reliable and tested. I mean, HIDs have been out since the early 90s. I've had the same setup on my vehicle for over 10 years, never had a problem, and they are the brightest of the three options. So if you like bright, you like HIDs. HIDs have a very wide beam pattern. Like, it just comes out almost like a 360. Similar to halogen, but even better, because halogens aren't that bright. HIDs are so much brighter that they fill in the gaps, so it's like a more of a 360. LEDs have a very narrow beam pattern, so if you ever read the reviews on an LED conversion kit per se, you'll see that for the same kit, one customer will give 5 stars and say, this thing is amazing, it looks really good, it's really bright. The next customer with the same exact kit will give it a 1-star rating, saying how they can't see anything. And the reason is because the beam pattern is so narrow. Your reflector, the natural reflector in your headlight, could make the difference between that light output getting wasted and that light output making it to the road. HIDs, they use less power than the halogen, but the LEDs use less power than the HID. Something to keep in mind, if you're going to be upgrading your halogen headlight, a lot of the new vehicles, they run the power for the headlights through the computer, and the reason for this is that if a bulb is out, the computer will see that there's something wrong, and it'll alert the driver. However, if you upgrade your headlight to an HID or an LED and it sees as a decrease in output, it'll think that this might be a problem with the headlight and cause a light out error message. It may cause the light to be cut off. It may cause the light to flicker. There is a solution for this though. You could add a resistor to the headlight, and that'll trick it into thinking it's drawing 55 watts, and that'll solve the problem. Another problem is that a lot of these headlights, halogen headlights, they have the bulb not only used for the main headlight, but also incorporated as a daytime running light or an auto light, all off the same bulb. And let's say the daytime running light uses a lower wattage. The bulb is perhaps 2 settings and it's a lower wattage. That'll cause the HIDs to flicker because they're not getting a sufficient 35 watt output, or not enough power to initially get them ignited. Again, the resistor should resolve this problem. It may not solve it with every single vehicle, but most of the vehicles it'll solve the problem. The LEDs are the newest of the technologies. It wasn't until about a little over 10 years ago Lexus was the first to incorporate them in their low beams on the flagship LS600H. A few years before that, there was a handful of vehicles that had them used as the daytime running lights, but for actual headlight use, it was Lexus who led the way. And when it comes to factory LEDs, they have the cooling elements designed into the headlight, because the LEDs, they create a lot of heat, and so there may be like cooling fins on the back of the headlamp. But when it comes to LED conversion kits, the way to spread out that heat would be through one of 2 tricks. The LED bulb would have a fan, a big ugly fan on the back of the bulb. So say this right here would be like a computer fan on the back of the bulb. That may be an issue if there's not much room behind your headlight to begin with. Let's say there's the back of the bulb and then there's the dust shield right there. That LED conversion kit may not fit unless you modify that dust shield. And those fans, they do break down. I've heard of nightmares where the fan stopped working and then the LED kept burning up and melted part of the headlight. Another way to dissipate that heat would be through a belt. It's like metal coils hanging out of the back of the bulb, and I'd be concerned that that hot metal coil hanging out of the rear of the bulb might come in contact with something it's not supposed to. Just a bad idea. If you can't tell already, I'm a fan of the HIDs. They're the brightest of the 3. They're pretty reliable, if not the most reliable of the three. I mean, they say that LED bulbs have the longest life in a vacuum, but in real world testing, not so much. LED lights is still in the process. I mean, they are getting brighter. They may eventually get brighter than HIDs, and I do believe they're going to get more and more reliable. I mean, right now it's just ridiculous. If you have a factory LED headlight and the light goes out, well, I mean, you got to take out the entire headlight. You got to take the headlight apart. Unlike HIDs and LEDs, the bulbs, they're not standardized. The LED components are all customized, specific to a particular vehicle. So you got to be ripping out circuit boards, and good luck with that. I mean, with the HIDs, I mean, there's two major components. The bulb sizes are standardized, and a lot of aftermarket companies have thrown their hat into the ring. So even though HID components were originally very expensive, the aftermarket parts are readily available and pretty inexpensive. So if you ever have a problem down the road, the parts are standard. I mean, you can get the replacement part from just about anybody. Now, that's not to say that brand isn't important. Brand is very important. Not all light technology performs equal, especially when it comes to halogen. I mentioned earlier to you about GE's innovation in halogen bulbs, the HIR. I've seen companies referring to their bulbs as HIR, even though they aren't HIR. I mean, HIR is very distinctive. You can tell that the filament is enclosed. So only buy from a reputable source. I mean, another reason to buy from a reputable source is you don't want to buy something from somebody to save $5 and then they are gone when a problem arises. You want to make sure that your warranty is actually enforceable. I've seen manufacturers referring to their HID conversion kits as Mercedes brand or Hella brand or Oscar brand. Newsflash, these companies don't make HID conversion kits. HID conversion kits are technically illegal. They're not supposed to be upgrading a halogen lamp to HID lamp because the beam pattern hasn't been approved by the DOT SAE. So those companies would never mess around with an manufacturing aftermarket HID conversion kits. So be skeptical of any of these companies that throw around big brand names. And even if, let's say, Mercedes were to get involved in HID conversion kits, it wouldn't be sold out of China. It's a German company. So another thing it's good to know is that I've heard of stories where a dealership would see that you have an aftermarket setup and they would threaten that your warranty is now void. Know your rights as a consumer. Look up specifically the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. A dealership can't just arbitrarily void your warranty because of an installation of an aftermarket accessory. They have the onus of proof that, let's say, a problem that did come up was as a direct result of the part that was installed. And the efficiency of the LED bulbs should really only be considered if you're riding around on a small displacement motorcycle where there isn't much electrical power to begin with, and you don't want to overstrain the electrical system. Even though the lower power draw does equate to saved fuel efficiency, it's not enough to be noticed, and it will not save you money over the life of the vehicle when taking into consideration the additional expense for the LED conversion kit plus time and labor. Always wear latex gloves when handling bulbs. The invisible finger grease on the tips of your finger, even if you wash your hands, is still there, and when it gets onto the bulb, it causes the bulb to burn out prematurely. If your finger does accidentally come in contact with the bulb, just wipe it down with an alcoholic wipe. Be very careful that nothing comes in contact with the bulb. So when pushing it through the socket of the headlamp, it's a very narrow opening. Take your time, make sure it does not come in contact with the edges of the lamp, because the more stuff that comes in contact to it, the better chance that you're decreasing the life expectancy. A properly installed halogen bulb can last many years. A properly installed HID bulb should outlast the life of the vehicle. When it comes to auxiliary lights, the rules that we just went over don't always apply. I mean, for example, you don't have to worry about a lights out error message or when it comes to auxiliary lights. Auxiliary lights generally are designed around the technology. There's no reason to, let's say, upgrade an auxiliary lamp to LED. When it comes to auxiliary lamps, I might perhaps favor LED. However, there are still excellent halogen and HID auxiliary lamps. It really depends on the vehicle and the needs. So contact me with any questions you may have, your particular scenario, and I can help guide you through that. Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any other questions, please contact me. My email is sales@blinglights.com. I don't always monitor the responses in this video, so please contact me and I'll be glad to help. I hope you enjoyed this video, and talk to you soon.